We're ready to go. We're live. And welcome, everybody. This is Facebook Live. I'm talking to Claudio. He's an artist. I'll let him introduce himself here and let everybody know what he does. Go ahead, Claudio.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Claudio Ghirardo. I'm an artist myself, comic book artist. I am a graduate of the Joe Cooper School of Cartoon and Graphic Art. I graduated back late '90s and early '90s, sorry. And been working as a freelance illustrator, contemporary artist. I did a lot of exhibition and shows. Got back into comics a couple of years back, and just do my own comics and been contributing to anthologies, doing my own web comic, publishing my own zines and comics, and doing some workshops. And
Yeah.
I think,
You've done quite a bit there.
yeah, I like to keep myself busy.
So, any new projects that you've been doing lately?
Yeah, actually, I'm working right now on a personal project. It's a autobiographical comic on how I got into comics, how I ended up leaving comics, coming back to comics, and it's kind of pretty personal because it kind of deals with a lot of, I guess, the heartaches I've had to try and make this as a living or trying to pursue it. So it's kind of slow only because it brings up a lot of emotions and feelings that I just don't want to feel. But you have to deal with it when you do an autobiographical comic. So that's one. The other one is I'm working with somebody in the States who has a website up and running, and he wants to post some of my comics. So I was actually today I was just this afternoon scanning some of the comics I had. So I'm going to be sending those to him, and then they should be posted up. And then I might be working on it was originally a 5-page story because I do some work for a website called the Comic Jam, which is a bunch of freelance and independent artists and illustrators who get together. We do a theme, and we do a 1 or 2 page comic on a theme. And one of the ones we did was public domain characters. And back in the '40s, there were all these superhero comics that were published with some really crazy superheroes. So I get together with one writer. His name is Luke Nelson, and I guess he likes the public domain characters as well. So he chose a bunch of characters. I chose a more black and white because most of my work is to be painted. So I did. This is a more of a black and white line work, and he liked it. So we said, okay, let's go do a story. We ended up doing a 5-pager, but it was so well done that I said to him, "Do you want to make it a longer comic?" And he said, "Yeah, let's do it." So Foreign Press Comics, which is the website we're telling you about, run by Keeler Mellor, has agreed to actually publish them. So he's going to expand the story a bit more. And then I'll be doing a painting with the city of Mississauga. We're doing a series of paintings dealing with the COVID and the quarantine that we're going through. So I was one of the artists selected to actually do a painting regarding this time we're going through. So that'll be coming up as well. I have to still sign the contract and everything. But those are the ones that basically are keeping in mind. And I'm always open commissions and works and jobs that people are looking for. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Getting to that comic book you were talking about, these are the 1940 comics you were talking about?
Yep.
Are they Canadian or they were American characters?
No, these are all American, if I remember correctly. Because I don't. There's a section, a number of websites that basically focus on public domain characters. So these are characters that anybody can use at any point, whenever. I'm not sure if Canada has any of those public domain characters. I know the States has it. Canada, I'm not sure about. But yeah, the guy I was working with, Luke Nelson, like there's so many of them. I mean, it's not even. Some of them were actually, and it's funny looking at some of the characters. they were actually seem to be almost the prototypes for characters that came later on. A good example, like most people think that Wonder Woman was the very first female superhero. She's not. There was actually a character called Phantoma, and she was the very first female superhero that was created. I think it was around 1942, around that time period. So it's really fascinating. These characters are really fascinating to me. So I thought that, and because of public domain, you can do almost anything with them. You can play around with them and change some of the powers or the characters or build any story you want around them. So that's why to me it's an interesting project.
Wow, that sounds kind of fun to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're talking about that character, it comes to mind for another character that's they're saying that beat Wonder Woman was Nirvana. I think that's how you pronounce it, Nirvana of the Northern Lights.
Yeah, I heard about that one as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure because I'm assuming when they were talking about the very first female character, they were talking a little bit more about the States. For the female character for Canadian, it may have been Nelvana, but my understanding was that Nelvana was actually the very first superhero created in Canada, unless I'm mistaken. But that's what somebody pointed out to me one time. She was the very first one created. But
yeah, there was a whole bunch that they exploded out because we couldn't export comic books to the States because it was an unessential item.
Mm-hmm.
Or I mean, we couldn't get comic books from the States. It was non-essential, and that's why we started creating our own. But the publishers couldn't print them in color because they didn't have the money to do it, so they did it in black and white.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was kind of normal back then. I understood. Like even most European countries, even to this day, they still do comics in black and white. Like I remember when I was living in Italy, I was 6 years old living in Italy and looking at the Italian comics. I used to love the Italian comics as well. They were all printed in black and white. And the Marvel comics that they shipped over was hilarious because there wasn't enough money for printing or for color printing. What they would do is one page or one section was colored and the next pages were black and white. And then they were colored. So you would, like, I remember the very first one I saw in Italy was a Spider-Man comic. It's the introduction of Daredevil with the Ringmaster. I remember that. So the first page is color, and I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Then to the pages in black and white, and I'm like, oh, okay. So then to the pages again, it is color. So because I was the kind of kid I was, what happened is the black and white pages for the Marvel comics, I would actually color Daredevil my own way, and I made some changes to the costume as well. So I did some fun stuff with that. So yeah, but yeah, it seems to be almost normal. I mean, and I do know in the U.S. there was, I think, EC Comics. A lot of them were printed in black and white at one point.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's just a money.
The Warren was printed in black and white. They did. I remember seeing a lot of Vampirella in black and white.
Yeah.
They scared the heck out of me reading those books.
It's funny. I wasn't so scared, but the reason was because in Italy, there were a lot of horror comics in Italy, and they really pushed the envelope in Italy. I mean, some of the stuff I saw was like, oh my God. I said, if my mother ever catches me reading these comics, I'd be grounded for a month. So it was something. So anyways.
Now, how did you ever get into comic books? Somebody, did you just somebody happen to hand you a comic book or?
Well, actually, I really got into comics when I moved to Italy. I was between the ages of 5 and 6 when I moved to Italy. Because my parents were originally from Italy and they wanted to be near family. And I didn't know how to speak any Italian. I only spoke English. And as a matter of fact, I didn't even go to a special school to learn Italian. I just went to a regular school. And of course, I couldn't speak the language.
Mm-hmm.
So in the area where we lived in, called Medusa di Livenza, there was it's not even considered a grocery store, but just a store where they sold stationaries, magazines, supplies, and they had comics there. And because I couldn't speak the language, I was attracted to comics because it was something I could actually go through. I could understand by looking at the pictures. But then what I also would do is look at the words, and I would somehow be able to make a connection. And so that, and but there was also something about comics that just, it was just fascinating to me, just seeing these images, next to each other, telling a story. And I just got totally into it. So I would always ask my parents, can I go to the store? Because it was a small farming community, so you could walk there. You know, it would take
Mm-hmm.
you, like where our place was like 2 3 minute walk. So I would just say, can I go and go get some comics? And my parents all did it because they knew I was having a rough time. So they just like, yeah, go ahead. Here's some money. Go ahead, get yourself some comics. And so it was there that I got a lot of the Italian comics and also some of the Marvel comics. And I just kept getting into it and getting into it and getting into it, and it just didn't stop. And so it was almost like I got addicted to it. So that's how it basically started for me.
Yeah. Well, the reading comic books. What was it? I saw a post on Facebook or something saying, well, it's not about comic books, but it says, get your kids into art. They won't be able to afford to get onto drugs.
Basically, that's how. Yeah, the art supplies are so expensive, and I'll be honest with you, even the comics are expensive these days. Get them hooked on comics, and trust me, they won't have any money for anything else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Especially today, the prices are so high on comic books. Like
Yeah.
the American. I don't know if you've read any lately comic books. They're like some of them are like $5 Canadian.
Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty. I have two problems. The first one is I'm into European comics. And the big difference between the European comics and the North American comics, the North American comics are basically almost like, I think 8.5 by 11, something like that. Maybe I'm wrong about the size of it. Whereas European comics are much larger, and they usually tend to be hardcover. So think about the fact that you're maybe grabbing a comic, here's the size of it, but then you get a European comic, and here's the size you got. Much larger, full color. You can imagine how expensive those things are. So
Yeah,
and I'm really into European. Obviously, growing up when I was in Italy, I got into the European comics. Uh, so that cost me quite a bit of cash. I've also heard that the printing cost just every year keeps going up higher and higher and higher with no, it doesn't even look like it's going to go down anytime soon. So, I mean, I don't know where it's going to go. But at the same time, you're going to pay the artists doing the work, the writers for the work they're doing. So, I don't know. It's hard. But I mean, if you want to take kids off of drugs, get them into comics. Trust me, that'll work right there.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you'll never be able to afford that drugs on comics.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, I was talking about this on another stream. Going to the store, and they used to be. I think when I started reading, they were 15 cents an issue, comic book
Yeah.
store, and they jumped up to 20, 25 cents.
Yeah.
I was able to even manage with over a couple bucks a book, but now, I'm like going. I walk in the store and I get one book, and I'm drained out of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
titles are not that good anymore either. I don't find.
I don't know. I don't know what to say about that because I struggle sometimes because I know the kind of comics I read as a kid and what I enjoyed. But I also understand that the world changes. And if comics are considered art, which I do consider art,
Yeah.
the use of the art form has to change with the time it's reflecting. How can I put this even to make sense? The way comics were back when I was a kid, the outlook of the world was different. I mean, I was born in '64. things were improving. Then the 70s came on, which the economy was great, and now it's changed. And now it's well, we see what's going on up there. So there's a change in how we look at the world, and whenever there's a change in how you look at the world, it affects art, and then in turn, the art affects the culture that it's within it or present within it. So if you're looking for, let's say, just for example, a comic, which is a form of escapism, where you don't want to think about this stuff, just give me a comic where I can just enjoy reading, so I don't have to spend the time not think about what's happening around me. That's different than I want to create a comic that talks about what is happening in the world today. I mean, I was watching this one episode on Comic Tropes just now about Dwayne McGuffey, who was a black writer in the business who wanted to bring in topics of race and black culture into the comics. And that was relevant at that time period, and it seems to be relevant now with what's happening. So will there be a cartoonist or comic book artist who's going to say, you know what, I want to do a comic, but I want to have it talk about what's happening right now? So that's the struggle I have. If I had my way, I just want to have comics where I could just have fun reading, enjoy. I mean, besides the superhero comics, to me, I grew up also reading Aspects, and I loved Aspects. It was just a fun comic to read and enjoyable. But at the same time, I enjoy Mouse by Art Spiegelman, which talks about not just the Holocaust, but it also talks about generational tension, you know, between children and parents. So there's a struggle I have all the time. Is like, are the comics? I mean, the question I sometimes ask myself is, are the comics really relevant about today's world, or are we trying to capture something that has already gone by? So that's what I go through.
Yeah.
So not sure what else to say about that. So.
Yes. Yeah, I like Art Spiegelman's Mouse as well. More of Dave Sims stuff. I don't know if you've ever read any of Dave Sims stuff.
Oh yeah, I definitely was. The only thing I have is I have a problem with Dave Sims' philosophy these days. Some of his outlooks, but what he did with Cerebus. Well, Cerebus I think is another good example, because look at the way he ended Cerebus. It wasn't a happy ending.
Yeah.
But I think I remember. I don't think I had an issue, but there was an issue where. Was it the issue where he was the character Cerebus met someone who told him his future and how he was going to end up? I'm trying to remember if there was an issue like that. I'm trying to remember now.
I don't remember. I dropped Cerebus for a while after Church and State.
Okay.
He was starting to do, I think it was Guys or something. Or Mothers and Daughters, or I'm not sure. But it just lost me. Church and State was just an epic, like high society. Church and State was the high point I found of Dave.
Yeah.
And his work for Cerebus. And then I think I read a few issues afterwards, and I go, he's completely lost me where he's going. And so I dropped the book for quite a while. And then when I heard the last book was coming out, I picked up a couple of issues before the death, or 300. And it was like still kind of like, this is different. There was a scene there where he was working for the Comics Journal. Cerebus was. He was working at some printing place. And that's all I can remember. And then I bought the one where he died. There were some funny parts in it because he had some fart jokes and stuff like that. But I wasn't overly impressed. But Dave had changed so much, what I've heard, He went from being an atheist to an Islam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a Muslim, or yeah, Muslim.
Yeah,
And
Muslim.
he was talking about Islam, Islam, Islam in his book, and I'm like, and then I was hearing stories that him and Gerhard wasn't getting along, and
Yeah.
the book, the whole storyline with him being changed over, kind of reflected that when I look back at it, and I go, yeah, I can see, he lost that magic because he went to a different space in his head.
It's interesting you mentioned that because it kind of reminds me of the story of Steve Ditko with his character Mr. A.
Yeah.
That when it was funny because I remember the work he was doing with Spider-Man and also Doctor Strange, and they were just amazing in my opinion. And then I think it was also when he did some work for DC. I think it was Shade the Changing Man, Stalker, The Question. There were some other characters he was working on. And and then all of a sudden the artwork, I felt as time went on, he was making it way too simple. It's almost like he didn't care about it because his focus really was his comic, Mr. A, and to get his viewpoint and philosophies across. And I heard that was the big thing. The thing. So in a way, he didn't actually disappear from comics, but his whole focus was then just Mr. A, because he wanted to get his the philosophy that he learned from Ayn Rand, and that was the main focus afterwards. So it does. I don't think it happens with all the writers and artists, but it does seem that as time goes on, and I think this is also where I think how this is a proof how the comics are an art form, because it becomes a way of expressing their emotions, their feelings, and what's going on in their world. Like to me, contemporary art is the artist voicing what they're experiencing in the world around them, and they want to say something about it. So they create artwork as a way to get that point across. And this is again when you see people like Steve Ditko, Dave Sims, as you pointed out, and there's Dwayne McGuffey, like I was talking. I think it's again where they actually start looking at comics and they say, you know what, this is a form of art. This is a way I can use this now to express my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences of the outside world.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it's work for me. That's what I'm grabbing, getting out of it.
Yeah. 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 Because I've seen that with Frank Miller too.
Oh
with
yeah.
Dark Knight, from Daredevil to Dark Knight, and then it's Sin City stuff.
Well, there was another one that it was another. Which one was it now? I can't remember. There was one where he got a lot of bad comments about. What was it again? It was a recent one that came out, and it supposedly it was got a lot of, because he was really harsh about a lot of his viewpoints about things, and I think it was something about Islam as well, or someone talks about that. And I'm trying to remember what it was. The comic now. Shoot, I wish I could remember it now. I can't remember, but there was one that was really, it drives me nuts now. I can't think of it. Anyways, but yeah. Anyways, like Frank Miller's another good example. So
yeah. No. Earlier, you mentioned to me before that you did schooling at Kubert, and you were there for quite a while. How long were you there at Kubert's?
3 years.
3 years?
Yeah, 3. It was it's a 3-year program, and I actually lasted 3 years, which is kind of interesting because when I went to school there, it's a very intense program. The idea is to train you to be a professional. So you would have 2 classes a day, which doesn't seem much, but in both classes, each day you'd be assigned. You'd be given an assignment, and then you would you would given some class time, but then you have to also continue working out at home. So you were basically given 5 days times 2, 10 assignments a week, all with a deadline when it was due. And one of my instructors was actually Jose Delbo, who's been around for many years. And Jose had this thing saying, if I give you 3 assignments, and it's due on 2 weeks from now, I want to see all 3 assignments. Don't give me two. If you give me 2 out of the 3, I won't even bother marking it. I won't even bother looking at it, and I won't even bother marking it. And every week you're late, I will downgrade you. So if you come with a comic and it looks really good, it would be worth a B plus. But because you were a week late, it goes down to a B or B minus. So it was really intense. And I remember our first year, we had just over 100 students. There's 4 classes total, about over 100 students. By my third year, there was only 25 of us left.
Wow.
It broke into 2 classes. So yeah, so it was really the best years of my life. I loved going there. It was so much fun. I loved the instructors. I loved the people we got to meet. So one of our instructors, of course, was Adam Kubert. My first year was actually Adam Kubert. Joe was one of my instructors. I met Erwin Hazen, who trained Dondi. And then we had special guests like Kurt Swan, Jeff Jones, and and I'm ashamed that I forgot this name, but the special effects artist who did Sinbad. Do you remember him? Of course, you forgot his name as well. He did all the Sinbad movies, and I feel awful that I forgot his name. God, I feel so stupid now. Let me see if I can find out. But hang on. Oh man, shows you what happens when you have too much information in your head.
You're talking about Sinbad.
The live action ones.
Okay, because I don't think I've ever seen any Sinbad movies. Are you talking about David Atkins?
I'm talking about who did the special effect. Ray Harryhausen.
Oh, Harryhausen. Oh, yeah, the Animator guy who did the Clash of the Titans.
Yes.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
Ray Harryhausen. Thank you for remembering. He was actually one of the speakers as well to our school, and actually seeing him and seeing a lot of his works was amazing. And Dick Giordano, we also got to meet.
Oh,
so
cool.
Joe would bring in all these people, and what was also great about the school is that Joe had all this artwork by a lot of artists at a time period. So we get to see original pages by Milton Caniff, Hal Foster's pages, and Alex Raymond's. They were stunning. You would walk down the hall, and you would stop every once in a while just looking at those pages because they were just so beautifully done. It's like unbelievable. And I still remember the Milton Caniff pages. And I didn't know this, but Milton Caniff loved whiteout. So when he would do a page, if it didn't look right, he would just go crazy with the whiteout. And there was one panel I noticed where I guess there's a character's in this car and it has no hood, which is not a big deal. But there was all this whiteout over it. And I was like, what's going on here? So I mentioned it to Joe, and Joe said to me, well, originally the car had a hood, but Milton Caniff wanted to show the character, so he just whited the whole thing off and didn't put the characters in there. He whited the whole page out. So that was fun. I think Milton Caniff these days will love the computer because it's like, I don't have to white anything out. I just have to erase it to the computer. Perfect. Don't have to worry about that anymore. So. But those 3 years were fun, and of course we went to New York, so we got to go into New York City. We got to go to the Marvel offices, the DC offices, so it was fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
And it would be, like I really liked Kurt Swan stuff when he did Superman. I would say he would be the definite Superman artist. Because I seen his stuff and I said, hey, his stuff is beautiful. But go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I was going to say, when Kurt Swan, what was interesting about Kurt Swan he was like almost like a guy you would just meet on the street. He had a very simple outlook at life. He didn't really see himself as being this grandiose cartoonist or artist. He just, to him, it was a job that he enjoyed doing. But what I was also told about Kurt Swan is that Joe said he had a reputation as being the ultimate professional. He would do the work to the quality they were looking for and on time. And he said that's the reason why he was put on Superman so much, because it wasn't just because he drew Superman well, but because he did an amazing job every time, and it was always on time.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyways, that was a fun part of it. But it was fun. But yeah, Chris Swan was an amazing artist in my opinion. I still remember some pages when I was a kid, seeing his Superman and the way he would draw the character and the way the muscles and everything was done. It was just amazing, you know. And at the Cuber School, the more you would learn about the medium, like how to draw comics, how to draw characters, how to tell a story, you developed more of a critical eye. Because I remember Todd McFarlane came on the scene, and a lot of the students loved his work. I was so about it, but everybody else just loved his work, so I was like, no problem. By the second year, all of a sudden, the first year students were like, look at McFarlane. His anatomy is so off. Oh my God, it's awful. Look at the way he's telling the story here. It's so off. Like all of a sudden they were criticizing McFarlane. So here McFarlane was one of the best artists they saw, and all of a sudden they're criticizing the way he was doing everything. So that's one of the things that actually the school really taught you, and why I loved it, because it really taught you how to be a professional and how to look at comics with a critical eye and really study it. So.
Yeah, Todd McFarlane, he always likes putting capes on people so he can hide the anatomy and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I look back at some of his stuff, and I don't find his artwork that great.
Yeah.
Well, he wanted to make Spider-Man more double jointed and stuff, which I understand, but sometimes it looks cool and sometimes it looked really awful. His drawings,
Yeah.
I don't think he does any more drawing. I think he does inking a lot.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know enough. I don't follow Spawn. My personal viewpoint, and of course everybody gets upset with me, is he's not the best artist in the world. He's also not the best storyteller in the world, because if you look at some of the way he does some of the layouts, it's kind of confusing. Or like he has a character, let's say the character jumping from left to right, and there's a building in front of him, and all of a sudden he lands, and that building is still in front of the character. And I'm like, well, I thought he was going to be past the building. So I don't find he's also the best storyteller. I don't, but I think the people who got into him is just because he really pushed the envelope when it comes to certain stories and the way he did things. But I talked to.
Well, he's a businessman too, so he knows how to market himself.
Oh yeah.
You could draw stick figures, and it was Todd McFarlane. He'd probably be number one in drawing stick people.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I remember in the 80s, there was a contemporary artist by the name of Mark Gustavi, and he was what's called a conceptual artist. So in other words, he would create artwork with a center around an idea. And one of the things he was focusing on was very much was consumerism, how we become a consumer society, and we're more focused on the name or the brand rather than the actual work. So one of the things he would do is he would have artists make paintings, and he would sign his name to it, and then he would sell it for over thousands of dollars because his name was on it.
Yeah.
And that was his whole focus. And there's an interesting story one of our instructors told us about Gustavi. I'm not sure. I might get in trouble for putting this in the air, so we'll see. There's a story that Sylvester Stallone considers himself an art critic, and he buys a lot of artwork. And the story went that Gustavi sold a painting to Stallone for a couple grand. I don't know or how much. Gustavi then went on the air, and he was talking about how Sylvester Stallone bought this painting for all this money, and it was a lousy painting. It was a crappy painting. And he doesn't even know why he bought this painting. And Sylvester Stallone heard this, and he was so angry. He went up to Gustavi and says, "I demand my money back." So Gustavi said, "Not a problem. I'll give you the money back. You give me the painting back." So the exchange went on, and then Gustavi sold the painting for 3 times by the value by making only one slight change. Underneath the painting, he put a plaque, and it said, "Previously owned by Sylvester Stallone." So the point that Gustavi was constantly making was saying, when it comes to art, he said that sometimes, people don't always look at the artwork; they're looking more at the name or the celebrity status. And so there was one person who was talking to me, especially when it came to someone like McFarlane, but also for the other was like Liefeld, said they're not great artists, but because they have a name, people will look at it, will consider it. Whereas I found that actually Jim Lee had has very strong drawing skills. I mean, he can draw.
Oh
That guy
yeah.
can draw. I mean, and it's just unbelievable. And he puts so much dynamic uh, force into his drawings. And when it comes to superheroes, I'm like overwhelmed. And it's always the anatomy is always tight. It's right on, and he makes it work for the story as well. And it always adds. He always gives something to it.
Yep. And he has a great anchor that works with him.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes his art even shine even better.
Yeah, yeah.
But he was the most talented of them all from the Image group. Because Valentino, his stuff was a little bit stiff.
Okay.
He did Shadowhawk.
Yeah.
And,
I didn't buy a lot of Image comics, so I wouldn't know enough about it. It's very, very. I was because of the Cuba School training in the way I am. I'm very critical, and I tend to be very um, picky about stuff. So I when I go through a comic, I just check everything out, and if there's something off, there's a very good chance I probably won't even bother with it. I'm not gonna try it. I'm not gonna even bother with it. Especially these days, I tend to, even because my cash flow is very tight.
mm-hmm.
There's got to be something really, uh, something that really grabs me when it comes to the comic. If it's me, if I don't see very good drawings or the stories are told very well, I won't even bother with it. So that's the way it works.
Yeah, I am the same way. If it's something I don't like, then I don't usually pick it up. I'll flip through it. I don't know if you're like me when you go into a comic book store and you browse at comic books, you'll flip through them. Kind of like that story you showed me when we were sitting in the convention up in Toronto.
Okay.
That person reading through your book and saying
Right.
thank you.
Yeah.
That person was there reading it for a half an hour, put it away. But I don't sit there and I'll flip through it. And I want to, if it looks exciting for me, then I'll go and buy it.
Yeah.
But I'll just have a quick glance through
Mm-hmm.
to see if I like the artwork. I maybe read a page and then I'll put it away. If I'm going to get it, I'll take it with me and then get it for later. But you can't go and sit and read a comic book for a half an hour.
Yeah.
Now, Dave Sims' book, you could. The one he had an essay in the letters page about Islam, and it was like 10 pages or something.
Okay. Yeah, I think when you also do that, I think it's also an insult to the creator or the writer, the artist of the comic, because to sit there and just read a comic in front of them, and then you put it down and you walk away. That to me is like an insult to them. It's like saying, you know what, I'm just gonna look through your comic, but I'm not gonna even consider buying it. And you're in fact you're wasting. You're not just wasting that. You are insulting them because it's like they're putting a lot of effort and work into it. If you don't care for it, that's not a problem. I think you have a right to have your opinion that you don't care for the comics. So it's like, you know what? I'll put it down. I'll move on. If somebody else likes it, let them buy it. But to stand there in front of them, grab the comic, and just stand reading it, and standing there, and reading it, and reading it, and stopping, and then put it down. It's like, wait a minute, you know how much effort and work the creator has put into that comic, and the only thing you're gonna do is just grab it, read it, put it down, and walk away. Be respectful of the work that they've done. And if you are gonna stand there and read it, then maybe you do like it. So show some support, buy the comic from them. Don't do something like. I mean, there's I've been at TCAF a couple of times, and also Kanzine, and there's a guy who I call, every time I see him, I know exactly what he looks like. I call him the reader. And what he'll do is he'll go to any table, grab a comic, and just start reading it there, right in front of the artist. Won't even buy it, just keeps reading it. Puts the comic down, grabs the next comic, starts reading that. Puts that one down, and then moves to the next table. And I remember one time he was doing this, and all the artists just standing there like. And so when he was going to the next table, the lady looked at him and says, "Don't you even touch it." And so he's like, and he walks right off. And I'm going, finally, somebody told this guy off. You know, because he's being disrespectful to the artists and the creators. You know, show them some support. Like I said, I mean, I might look through a book real quickly and just check it out. If I don't like it, I put it down. Like you said, I move on. However, if I stand there looking at it for a while, it's obviously catching my attention. So it's like, you know what? I'm going to buy it because there's something worthwhile here, and I want to support this person. So it's just being respectful to them. And then I find out later when I get home, I go through it again. It's like I see more stuff. I can pick up more stuff that I didn't pick up before.
Yeah. I haven't had really anything like that at my table. You know, I've had people flip through it and say thank you. I did remember I was selling when I put out Max Burger #2. I was trying to sell them at a hamburger place.
Okay.
Well, here's an interesting place to sell it at a hamburger place. But I was noticing the customers, and they come by and they're having their lunch, and they get the person had the books out on the counter, and they would grab a book and go and sit down and read. And I said, "You're not going to buy that?" And he says, "No, I thought they were just having it here for us to read."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, there is a price tag on it." And I took the books out after because they were getting wrecked and spoiled with food and stuff like that. So it wasn't a good place. She didn't know how to sell them anyway. She would have. I would have had them behind the counter, and and just pointed out to the customers, "We got a comic book here that's about a hamburger. Would you like to buy one $2?" I would have given her half of the book. I would have kept the $1 for myself because at the time when I printed the book, it was I think I paid 37 cents a book for that first issue of Max Burger. That was newsprint, cheap, really cheap newsprint.
Yeah.
And so I could have made it 60 cents on a book. I still would have made a profit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, that's what sometimes it happens. You try different things, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, we got Sean here. He's a regular that comes in here.
Oh,
he mentioned here. He said, "I I once went to a place where you could read the comic at the store for $1.
Okay. So you actually would pay $1 just to read the comic.
Yeah.
Okay, so then of course the person's making some money.
Yeah.
You know, so but I mean that's how it's I guess that's one good way to actually get people interested in the comic is here, give me $1. But the thing is they're making money. Okay, if I don't sell it, at least I'm making money by you reading it. So
Yeah.
but I kind of wonder if there were certain comics that would allow that to happen. Like these are the comics you could read, these ones you don't. So
Yeah. These are a
but
little bit more expensive.
yeah.
You know.
Well, there's also a place in Toronto. What is it? I'm trying to remember what it's called now. And basically, it's in an area where they actually you donate a comic or a zine that you publish yourself. And the
Hmm.
idea is for kids to come in who are pretty rough neighborhoods. So they come in and they just have comics where they can read, so at least keep them out of trouble. So it's just somewhere you can donate. So it helps them out as well and helps the kids out. And that I don't mind if I just give them a comic like that. So I give a couple of my pieces. Figure at least
Yeah.
that way we just need.
I remember a comic book store in Waterloo. Um, it was a bookstore called Carry On Books. It's still Carry On Books. It's owned by a new owner, but the previous owner wouldn't allow you to look at the comic books. You couldn't touch them unless you were going to buy them, and he was quite rude, you know. And the guy that owns it now, his name is Andy Bass, and he says, "I bet you remember him really well, Phil, who owned the previous store." I said, "Yeah." I said, "A lot of customers did, because he would have comic books out, like books that weren't really for sale, but they would be underneath the comic book bins, and people would go under, probably thinking they're cheapies,
Mm-hmm.
and he would flip right out." And I'm like, "Well, if you don't want them to read them, you don't have them out on the floor. You got a back room, just
Yeah.
take them in the back room, And it's one woman,
Yeah.
I was going to a school called Open Door in Waterloo.
Okay.
It's a school for adults. So if you wanted to get your grade 12 again, say you didn't make your grade 12 when you were like, the age that you were going to school, you could go back in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or whatever. And they had an art class. So this woman, she was a friend of mine. She went in the store and she went through those boxes, and he yelled at her. And she came to me and she said, "I'll never come into that store ever again." And I think he
Oh,
lost a lot
wow.
of business, But he was the
Mhm.
only place I was able to buy Ninja Turtles #2.
Oh, okay.
He had #2 and #3 there. The comic book store in Kitchener, Now and Then Books. I don't know if you ever went to that store, Now and Then Books, when it was open before
No.
Harry passed away. Harry
No.
was the first comic book retailer in Canada,
Oh,
or
wow.
or across North America, I think it was. Because Harry
Okay.
started his store in '72. He
Okay.
actually helped finance Dave Sims' book.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and Dave worked for him for a while at Now and Then Books.
Oh, okay.
And but Harry didn't have a lot of those independents. So I would go, because sometimes you go to another store and you find other different books.
Mm-hmm.
The one in my town now, Looking for Heroes, they don't carry too many independents. They
Mm-hmm.
got the Marvels, DCs, IDW, and Image.
Yeah, yeah.
But and I think they might have the Dynamite and Boom, but
Mhm.
nothing really smaller.
Right.
So Phil was great when he was there, because if Harry didn't have it, he'd probably have it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's I wish there were stores that would be more supportive of the independents, but at the same time, I understand their focus is we got to make a living, we got to bring an income in, we got to pay the rent. So, but I don't know. I wish there was a way to get around that. I don't know myself. That part of the business I'm not very knowledgeable at. I mean, I'm at the other side, which is basically trying to get the comics and trying to get it out there and trying to get people to see it, know about it, so they can purchase it, or also like I have a Patreon account. Well, the Patreon account is going to come down because I haven't had enough people. So I started a coffee account, KO-FI. So what I'm going to be doing is like for foreign press comics, when I post my comics there, and then I'm going to be going back to my own web comic. I'm just going to put a link where people can just say, hey, every once in a while, could you help me out by just giving a donation, so it helps me continue doing my comic, and then I still would be willing to like maybe do a commission for somebody, or if they want some pages that they still like a lot, they're welcome to. We can work something out where you can get the page or something like that. I did that for. I do an independent comic for a guy in the States. It's called Monsters, and it deals with three characters in particular who have afflictions. But these afflictions, they're mistaken as monsters because they have afflictions. So, for instance, there's the character Drac, who's actually Dracula, is actually a guy who has a blood anomaly, and so he needs a blood transfusion every couple months. When he has a transfusion, though, he for some weird reason he gets stronger, and then when he has children, the kids look exactly like him. So that's kind of another anomaly. So the first one's called and they call us monsters, and then I did a second one called a monster of betrayal. The first issue actually is available at the store by Alfonso store, which is in Kitchener. I forget the name. Studio Comics.
Yep, Studio Comics. Yep.
Yeah. The first issue is available there, and the second issue is just in the States right now. And then there's supposed to be a third issue, but right now it's being put on hold because of the COVID situation. So I mean, actually, Alphonse is one of the few people who actually carries independent comics. But it's an exciting time to be independent because there is so much social media available to you to get yourself out there, and there are festivals now that focus mainly on comics. But at the same time, it's still a lot of work. It's still hard, and constantly get yourself out there. And that's something I always struggle with because I prefer just being in my studio, being left alone. I don't want to be bothered. I have this. I remember my first couple of years, I didn't want to go out there. It's like, just give me the work and I'll take care of it. Then I'll send it to you. And I still like that. I only go to these cons and festivals because I know I have to, and I have to meet the people. If I had my way, I would just stay in my studio. Let somebody else take care of it.
So you're an introvert too, are you?
I'm actually a major introvert. I can spend hours just being left by myself, and it wouldn't faze me one bit. As a matter of fact, when my wife and I go up north, I have no issues with it because I'm like, okay. And actually, sometimes my father-in-law joins us only because he's not widowed, and so my wife says, I need to spend some time with my father. I said, go ahead. And then I just go off on my own. And I just take up a sketchbook or pick up something, and I just start working. I'm just left alone. My wife comes with me and says, "You okay?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm fine. Go ahead. See you later. Bye." So I'm actually a major introvert. I can spend hours by myself and just work and read a comic or basically work on something. And I prefer it that way a lot of times. There are times when I'll give you an example. There was a situation one time where there was a lot happening, and I was getting really stressed out. And so my wife then looked at me, and the first thing she said to me is, "Do me a favor, go into your studio and stay there. Stay there for the next couple of hours, okay? Don't come out until you're feeling better." So I go into my studio and I'm working away, and then I come back out, and she goes, "How are you feeling now?" I said, "Oh, I'm doing a lot better." She says, "Yeah, do me a favor, every once in a while, could you just go to your studio, just go and work there." So I'm like, okay. So she says, otherwise, she says, you're a bear. You're just, and I'm miserable. And I go, yeah, you're right, because I need that time for myself. I just am like that.
Yeah, you need to get out and draw and express what's going on in your head.
Yeah, and also because what happens is I always give myself projects to work on just to keep myself busy. I don't like not having anything. So part of it in the back of my head is like, I still got to work on this. I still got to finish this off. I still got to do this. I mean, the personal project I'm working on right now, I've got 17 pages done, and I got another, I would say about 14 more to go.
Wow.
And that's the only thing I'm thinking about is like, I got 14 more pages to finish off. I got 14 more pages I have to finish off. And that's all that's going through my head. Unless something else comes in and just says, oh, Claudio, we got to do this. Can you do this project for us? Okay, I got to get this project done. I got to get this project done. That's that's just the way I work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm like that too, because I'm actually started a new. Well, I thought I finished off issue 3 of Max Burger, but I look at the artwork. I was having some problems with my eyes. Things weren't focusing because I'm almost 60 now.
Okay.
And I'm like, how come things are not? I'm seeing double lettering and stuff. So when I had my eyes tested, my far vision is good. Things that are close is the problem.
Right.
So I've got to start wearing
Glasses.
I hate wearing them. I hate wearing them because I used to be able to see. Well, you wear glasses all the time, but
I've been wearing glasses since I was 6 years old.
How long have you been wearing them?
Since I was 6 years old, basically. So now it's about I'm almost 56 now. So yeah, I've been for 50 years now. Just the way it happened. So
Yeah. But it's hard to say when somebody hasn't worn those ever in their life, and all of a sudden you got to wear them.
Well, my attitude, my attitude is like, when I was younger, people were making comments about me having to wear glasses. I'm going, okay, well now you know what it feels like. So you're not gonna get sympathy from me. I'm sorry, you're not gonna get sympathy from me. It's like now you know what it's like.
Yeah.
Get used to it. So so that's all.
But when I drew the books, when I drew it a couple of years back, issue 3, I look back at them going, they're terrible. I have to redo it again. And I tend to do that all the time with my stuff. I look back at it like my first issue with Max Burger. I didn't like the artwork on that. And so I redrew it. Everything is redrawn, and I'm quite happy with it.
Good.
So hopefully maybe the second time doing the third one will be the charm.
Yeah.
And it'll work out.
Yeah. See, I don't work that way. When I get a project done, I basically am done with it, and I just move on to the next one. I don't like this autobiographical one that I'm doing right now. I'm actually redoing it only because I was looking at it. I had done it years ago, and I was looking at it and going, there's a lot of things about this I just don't care for, but there's also a lot of stuff that's missing that I should have included in it. So what I decided to do is redo it, just include some stuff that I missed out on, and I wanted to include some new things as well. So I figured, you know what, let me redo it, renew it. But once the project is done with me, that's it. I just want to move on to the next one, and that's the way I prefer working. I mean, one of the other problems I have sometimes is I get bored after a while. Once a project is done, I'm like, I don't want to work on something like this anymore. I want to do something different. So it helps sometimes to have different projects for me anyways, to work on. Like I thought I was done with superheroes until I discovered the main story came up. And now it's like, it comes up, and now, we talked about it. It's like, yeah, you know what, let's continue with it, because it's something different. It's fun. It's something new I can play with, some new things I can try. It's like I said, it's quite. I'm just going nuts with the details as well. That's the other thing about it. I'm just adding so much detail into the drawings that it's Anyways, not even funny. I'm not even sure if I have anything.
Do you have any artwork there to show?
Unfortunately, I'm not in my studio. If you give, where would the artwork be? Hang on. Let's see if I can find it on here. If I can get it on my phone, hopefully it'll work okay, but I can't guarantee it. So let me just see what I can do. Just give me a couple minutes. And this was lettered by a guy in this case. His name is Letter Squids. The guy's a phenomenal letter. Okay, let's see how well this comes out. Okay.
Yep.
Tell me if there's any issues or problems with it. Okay. Oops.
Right.
Can you see it okay or not?
Yeah, you can see it. Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's usually I'm used to seeing this stuff in color.
Yeah, I know. Well, I wanted to do something different. I mean, when it comes to black and white artwork, the ones I like the most, how can I put it? It varies, but one is an Argentinian artist by the name of Jose Munoz. He did one called Alex Sinner, and it's this amazing German expressionism blacks with line work. And his stuff is phenomenal, and it really inspires. I want to do something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
The other one that really got to me is, I don't know if you've heard of him, Sergio Toppi. I don't know if you heard of him or not. Did you hear him or not? Or
What
seen
was
his work?
name? What was his name again?
Sergio Toppi.
No, I don't think I've heard of him.
Okay, I can guarantee you look at his artwork, you'll almost be so overwhelmed with his drawings. You'll just say, you know what, I quit drawing. If this guy is this good, I'm not going to even come close to touching him. And one of the books I have of his is a collection of short stories that were printed in Italy. Bill Sienkiewicz wrote the foreword. And Sienkiewicz said that when he even came across Toppi, he was just literally blown away that he had tried copy his style.
Yeah.
And supposedly, I didn't know this. A friend of mine told me that Walt Simonson was inspired by Sergio Toppi's artwork. And and I remember, it's funny because I forgot all. I remember seeing his work when I was a kid, buying those comics. Because in Italy, besides regular comics, you can actually buy paperback anthologies, which has a collection of short stories that they would continue on to the next issue.
Yeah.
They still do it to this day. To me, it's one of the smartest ways to actually get comics out there. And Toppi contributed to a number of them. And it wasn't until years later when I came across Sergio Toppi going, I don't know, didn't think of anything else. I looked at the artwork. I remember this guy. I saw his work when I was a kid, when I was living in Italy. The time I was living in Italy, it just is mind blowing work. If you could just give me couple seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, before you show that, Sean has said something else here. He says, "I wish I was able to do art like that." I guess that when you're showing your art on your phone.
Well, is this Sean? You said?
Yeah, Sean. Yeah.
Sean. Let me tell you what was told to me when I was in the Kubert School about artwork. One of our instructors, Ben Ruiz, was our figure drawing instructor. We were talking to him about how to do good art, and Ben always had this amazing thing where he would say, well, "What is good? What's good art?" So we got to discuss. And he would do this all the time, and we would just get into these big discussions. And so one time, Ben said to us, "Okay, let me explain to you how you do the good art." And he says, there's a story of a young man who played the violin, and he went to New York City so he could actually play for the New York Philharmonic. He gets to New York. He has a suitcase in one hand, his violin in the other hand. So before he goes to his hotel room, he decides he wants to see Radio City Music Hall because he dreams of someday actually playing there. He sees this homeless person in the street, and he says, "Excuse me, can you tell me where Radio City Music Hall is located? How I get to Radio Music Studio Hall. How do I get to Radio Music Studio Hall? So the homeless guy looks at the guy. He looks at he sees his violin. He looks at the guy again. He looks at the violin again. He looks at the guy. He says, "How do you get to Radio City Music Hall? Practice, constantly practice." And the story basically was, if you want to make it to that level, you got to keep on working on, keep on working on. So the drawing that you're seeing from me, this is just something I've been doing for, well, let's see, I'm 56 years old. I started going to the Cuba school when I was 22. So what, 34 years that's taken me to draw that well. Anyways, are you ready to get are you ready to be overwhelmed? Okay.
Sure.
Here's a page from Sergio Tappi. Oops.
Oh yeah! Wow. Nice line work.
Amazing line work, and he varies it in the renderings. I mean, this is actually, where's a really good one? Oh, hang on. There's one of a witch here. Let's see if we can find the witch. Here it is, sitting on a rock.
Oh yeah. Look at the textures in the rock. Wow.
Mm-hmm. And this is a close-up. And look at also the way he designs it as well. His design is amazing.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That face and the hair.
Yep. Yeah, it's just unbelievable the way what he does with this, you know. And this just shows you the use of the black and white, the way it's drawn, the use of the black and white is just spectacular. It's just unbelievable how it pulls off. But also the way he lays out the pages when he tells a story is phenomenal. You know, that shows you the witch's face and the people, and see the white silhouette there. So, anyways, so it was his work when I did the rendering. It was his work, and the other guy I was thinking a lot about was Winsor McKay. I don't know if you've heard of Little Nemo, because I have one of his books of his black and white artwork, the line work, and it's just, again, just unbelievable. Solid drawings, not only a knowledge of anatomy, but how you make the figure move in such a way. And that's what also is phenomenal, because there's some artists who, when they're drawing the characters, they're being very accurate, but they make it very stiff. They don't move that well. Whereas there's some artists, they know the anatomy very well, but they also are able to manipulate that anatomy in such a way that the figure is like literally bouncing off the page. Like, to me, that's one of the things that Ditko had. What I like about Ditko when he did Spider-Man to me was like, it almost moved like a gymnast. He almost moved like, it was like he was rubbery. He could just move and twist all over the place. But all the anatomy was always right on. And that was just one of the skills that Ditko had. He just had a knowledge of anatomy, but he knew how to make that character just move. And what I liked about when he did Spider-Man is that Spider-Man moved like no other Marvel character. It was so unique the way he did them, you know. So that's one of the other thing is the expression, how you can make a character very expressive, and how the character can, not just facial expression, but the body can move. And to get that kind of story across, and just the way the character is moving, I think is phenomenal as well. I mean, Toppy is, I would say, it's a little bit stiffer, but he still does a very good job. But Ditko was phenomenal, and of course, another one who I thought was very good at that sort of stuff was Gene Colan. I think Colan, the way he could make the characters move was amazing. So, and there was a lot of them out there that could actually do it. So, and of course, the one who brought Kirby what I thought was interesting about Kirby's figures was the raw power. It's like these characters were like you could feel that they were superheroes. They were unbeatable because they were drawn like they could not be defeated. They were just beyond, any earthly strength. Maybe it's the best way to describe it. So to me, each artist, not just with the line work, but the way they draw the characters, gives the characters a certain personality that stands out. I mean, I even look at another one who I think is a phenomenal artist is Charles Schultz with Peanuts, because it's a simple line drawing, but he is so impressive with the way he does the line. Like if you look closely at his characters, they're all drawn pretty much the same way. So how is it that you have no problem telling the difference between Charlie Brown and Sally and Linus and Lucy, even though they're pretty much drawn the same way? The bodies are the same, but it's just the way he infuses the characters and the movement in those characters that just they stand out, and they are their own personality. They are their own characters. And again, that's what makes someone like a Charles Schultz an amazing artist as well. And that's another thing that you can look at. So you have someone like a Serge Tapie, who is so detailed and rendered and is phenomenal drawings. But then you have someone like a Charles Schultz, very simple, squiggly line drawings, but the level is the quality is still the same. That high quality. I think I went off on a tangent there. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It was interesting. What did you think of George Perez stuff?
Oh God, Perez was another one whose work I loved as a kid. But what I loved about Perez to me was a specialist in team books, because he made each character look different from each other. It wasn't the same person. I remember I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about Howard Chaykin. And they said that Chaykin's characters' faces are always the same person. It's almost as though if he's doing a movie, he's hiring the same actor. Perez, to me, the specialty was his characters moved, but he made each character themselves, who they are, unique. There was never any crossover. You knew who was who each time, just by the way they drew it. And of course, the way he drew team books was amazing. It was interesting. There was one a cover, I think, an Avengers cover, where he had all the Avengers, probably all the Avengers, and there were tons of Avengers. And one guy said to me, what was interesting about Perez is that Perez knew which characters had the power of flight, which ones were acrobatic, and which ones could not fly. So he made sure that the characters who couldn't fly would be on the ground, the characters who were acrobatic would be in the air, along with the characters who knew how to fly. And you never had to question the characters' powers, because you knew, yeah, if you saw Spider-Man in the air, it's because he can jump that high, he can flip that high. You know that. You don't have to question that. If you saw the Beast, yeah, you have to question that. Whereas sometimes some other people, if they draw a character in the air, they're going, okay, well, how did that character end up in the air? They can't fly. They're not acrobatic. Like Captain America, he's acrobatic, but instead of putting Captain America in the air, I'll put him on the ground where he's running, because it works better. And I think, again, the personality, how you actually capture the character's personality, is one of the abilities that Perez did. And it's not surprising he would always do team books, because he had that ability. It was amazing, in my opinion, anyways.
Yeah, he was so much for detail and everything.
Yeah.
Like there was a Crisis cover he did where he had all the heroes, where he had Supergirl and Superman's arm, and he had so many characters crammed in there.
Yeah.
I think he broke the record for how many characters on a cover.
Yeah. But again, I remember the cover, and it's like you could tell which character is who. And he actually thought about that. He didn't put them all the same height. He made each character the height they're supposed to be and the build they're supposed to have. And again, that was fun. Again, it stood out. you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I was told he came up with a new way of doing covers where it didn't have to do with a story. It was more like a decorative type where it actually just stood out. So yeah, yeah. But I remember Perez. Perez was one of my favorites growing up as well. I loved him, especially as the Teen Titans. I thought he was amazing. What he did with the Titans was phenomenal.
Yeah. I
So
discovered him. Yeah, I read an issue of Avengers, and they just found him as he moved over to DC.
mhm.
And he did some back issues for the Flash. He was doing some Firestorms short stories, and then he went into the Teen Titans. And I
Yeah,
followed him all the way through. I made sure when I knew he was in that book, well, he was in every almost every issue.
mhm.
I wouldn't even have to look at the book. I go in the store. That was on my pull list. That was a book I was getting because I knew
Yeah.
George Perez was going to, and Marv Wolfman was going to give me a good story.
Oh yeah, Wolfman was amazing. I actually had a chance to meet him at a convention one time. And the funniest thing was somebody was asking him questions because he was doing a book called The Vigilante.
Yep, yep.
And so some guy said, "What do you think the difference is between the Vigilante and Batman?" Which I kind of thought was a bit of a dumb question, but whatever. And he said, "Well, there's no difference. They're both psychopaths." He says, "To me, Batman is a psychopath. I mean, this guy goes around in costume beating people up because they're criminals. It's like he's a psychopath. I mean, he suffered this trauma, and now he's going after people because of what happened. So, but to me, besides the Teen Titans, the other book that I loved on Perez very much was when he took over the Avengers and he did the first couple of issues of the Avengers. But this is the one where the storyline was that the Avengers went back in medieval times. I don't know if you remember that issue. And seeing all the characters in their medieval costumes, I was like floored. Like I said to myself, how the hell did you come up with these designs? Like it was just amazing. He chose almost the right design for each character as they would be the medieval times. I was just like, how the hell did you do? How'd you come up with these designs? It just shocked me. I mean, he made the Scarlet Witch look like a gypsy, and I go, wait a minute, that's right. The Scarlet Witch's mother was a gypsy. That's right. I forgot in the origin story. She comes from a family of gypsies. Oh, jeez, I didn't even see. I forgot all about that. And yet he drew her like that in the comic. And then the design of Captain America as the night costume he had, Captain America. I don't know if you ever saw those issues or not. That was amazing.
Yeah, I haven't seen those. I think I think they did 200 or some. And there was one with a robot on the cover. It was
Mm-hmm.
one of the old Shogun. I think it was called Shogun, the comic book back in the 70s. And they
Yep.
had the character show up in that issue. And I think I grabbed that because I was familiar with that comic book in the late 70s. And I said, I picked that up. And then I think it was shortly after that was the issue 200. And then he left
Yeah.
and moved to DC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I didn't read a lot of Avengers. I couldn't get too much into the Avengers. But when he went over to DC, that's all I did. That's when I recognized him, and I go, shit, I got to go and start buying his stuff now. You know, I seen Teen Titans come out, new Teen Titans, and I go, that blew me away. The artwork, his artwork, I do have an original from his first run.
Oh, really?
From Yep, issue is it issue 7? It's got the first appearance of Deathstroke.
Oh, okay.
And it's got the Hive there. Let me reach over and get it. I haven't hung it up yet. You can see my other pictures up on the wall. These are John Byrne pieces.
Yep, I see those.
There. I do have a Wonder Woman page. I'll show you that first before I get the other one.
Is it? Okay, is that the one? Okay. Wow.
Steve Trevor's in the plane over here.
Okay.
I'm going to glare on from my screen.
Yeah.
Go this way.
Okay.
I love the background here because it's all pencil.
Right.
And it was textured, and it's when it was on paper, it looked really neat.
Okay.
But I bought this straight from him. He was in Toronto years ago at a convention. Called Pandora.
Right.
He's trying to raise money for diabetes.
Oh, okay.
This is the Teen
Oh,
Titans.
yeah. Okay. I remember this. Okay, I remember this now.
I paid, I think, $30 for this back in the 80s.
Wow. Oh, wow.
It was in the comic buyer guide. So I had put down a list. This was my number one pick. And I wrote down, alternative ones in case that was sold out. I wish I bought a few covers too. But when you're like I'm in my early 20s when that came out, and I'm going like, well, you can actually buy artwork because you're going through the comic buyer guide, and I'm like going, oh, there's somebody selling artwork. But then you think, are they really selling artwork? Because you can't really trust an ad. But I sent off the money, and I got the page that I wanted. So I was quite happy with that.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I got a fair amount. I got an early Dave Sim page too.
Oh, cool.
Dave did a book called Beavers.
Okay.
And it was about a bunch of beavers. Here, I got it right.
Okay.
He actually, if you ever looked at Captain Canuck, he had one in Captain Canuck where the
really? Okay.
was looking at a Captain Canuck comic and somebody was making fun of him.
Right.
This is an early Dave Sim.
Oh, wow. What do you know?
Yeah. So it's a lottery ticket, and the guy gets mad and starts ripping up the ticket, and he starts jumping on it, throwing it on the floor, and he says, I guess not everybody wins at Wintario.
Yeah.
I guess the thing was back then with Wintario, if you bought the ticket, you could win. Everybody's got a winner or something,
Yeah.
But yeah, I bought this off Harry Kramer. He had that in the store, and now and then books. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. My battery is slowly dying out here. Give me a second.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Okay. There. Here we are.
Yeah,
Okay.
those. Now, do you have other people's artwork in your studio to inspire you or anything like that?
I got some. I actually have I have a Mobius poster from Epic Illustrated when he did when Epic Illustrated had published his books. I have a poster of his that actually was signed by him.
Oh, cool.
I got it from a friend. Yeah, a friend of mine I got it for me. I got a Mobius print. I've also got I have to I'm not in my studio, so right. I can't remember what I have around me, but I have that, and then I have some Frazetta piece as well. But I usually and I got a lot of my own paintings. But I usually, for me, the inspiration for me really comes from, because I'm a very visual person. When I look at images, they usually stay in my head. And whenever I work on a piece, a lot of times those images come into my head. So something comes into my head, like I'm doing a page and working on something, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, yeah, presented this like this. Oh wait, but Keen did something like this. And so sometimes I might pick up the book and just go through it a bit. So I do have some, but I also have other artworks as well, prints of other of artists like Manet, Toulouse-Lautrec. So I kind of throw in almost anything in there that really grabs my attention. Plus, I have some artwork from prints that I bought from other. Actually, I bought a Gerhard print of when he did the Little Nemo in Slumberland. He did a cover for Little Nemo in Slumberland. So I have that in my studio now. So yeah, I have artwork. my big thing is the books. Well, we have like tons of books all over the place. So
Yeah.
now with COVID, that's what I'm doing right now. COVID, like every once in a while, I bring out some books and I just go through the books. I mean, I went over the topic one. I got a Joe Kubert graphic novel called Yoso. And this was an interesting one because Kubert, all the drawings are in pencils. No, none of the drawings are inked. I'll give you a quick look. But this is a really good one. And these are Joe Kubert's pencils that he
Oh,
did.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So is this a new printing or?
No, this has been around for a while. This has been around for a while. This is actually a story of Joe basically, because Joe Kubert and his family escaped Auschwitz. And this is a story more of what would have happened if they had not left Auschwitz. What would have happened? Because the main character, Yoso, is a young boy who basically can draw, and he fantasizes about someday drawing comics. Only in this case, he actually gets stuck in Poland, and he's not able to escape. So the story is about what would happen if he stayed there. But the drawings are up, and the pencil drawings are just phenomenal. With some whiteout. Then the other one I picked up is a comic that was printed by something called Blackthorn Publishing, the business. And this one is an Italian artist called Eleuterio Saprieri. He actually is famous for a heavy metal story he did called Druna. Okay? And Saprieri has this amazing, detailed style, almost like a sharp lines. That's like perfect for westerns. And I'll show you a real quick page. His stuff is unbelievable.
Wow, nice.
And it's perfect for westerns because it gives it a grit. And the other one I was reading is Revolver, which actually is a friend of mine. His name is Sal Good Sam. He's in Montreal. He actually did a graphic novel called Therefore Repent. And damn good artist as well. And he actually hosts what's called the Montreal Comic Jams, which you can actually do online. You can actually join online. So I did a couple of them with him. And what you do is just get together online through Zoom. Then there's a website called Agi.io, where you can actually draw on, and then everybody draws a panel. So this is one of the pages he did. I thought was kind of quite interesting, the way he plays around with the space.
Okay.
And then the other one, I got another artist who I was reading last night, whose work I really like is art. Have you heard of Nick Powell? He's famous for doing a book called March, which is actually the story of Senator John Lewis. And he grew up in the Midwest. And all of his stories are dealing with growing up in the Midwest. And this one is called Any Empire. And Any Empire basically is how the Midwest fascination with soldiers and war, but he also throws in how it's actually skewed. He has a very harsh approach to it. So here's like one scene about his drawings.
Wow, that's nice.
Okay.
I like the expression on the girl's face.
Yeah. And also what's amazing about him is the way he uses the black and white. Sorry.
There's a little Will Eisner in there too, it seems like.
Yeah, I think so. Anyways. So like I said, those are the kind of books I was just reading recently, so I'll probably I'll bring up another couple more and read some more.
Yeah.
But that's all I've been doing with COVID. So that's one of the things I do a lot. That's again why I read a lot. This is one of the things I also miss about with the COVID. One of the things I used to do a lot is I would enjoy going to a coffee shop. I would just grab myself a tea and a snack, I would either start sketching or reading a book, and it was just a way to get out of the house and the studio, but still doing work. I actually remember when I would sometimes I would have assignments, and I would be working on an assignment there. I remember there was one time I was working on somebody's story, and a lady comes by, and she says, "Oh my God, you're so talented." I go, "Huh? Well, what you doing? What you drawing there?" "Oh, okay. So sorry about that. Yeah, yeah. It's just a project, just a job I'm working on." "Oh, you do this for a living?" "Yeah." So then know what to say after that. So, anyways, but that's one thing I kind of miss right now. I really miss that, just being able to go to a coffee shop or a place and just sit down and read a comic or do work on something. But so I just put the music on here, you get to work.
Well, you've seen my story where I'm really upset that my second home has been
Oh yeah,
closed down.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is it gone or is it just
Well,
closed down?
it just closed down because of COVID.
Yeah.
They are open. I went up on Tuesday and I got a smoothie.
You're right.
So I had my name on the cup. So I felt good. I could remember who I was, you know. But they're doing like call in. So you call in, set an order, and then you come and pick it up. And
Yeah.
the city hall in Kitchener is all torn up, so you can't get in. There, the only way you can get there is knocking on the kitchen door because
Okay.
they won't allow you inside City Hall, and the front of the entrance is all tore up because they're redoing the cement on the around the building because they're starting to move. You know, people could trip and stuff like that on the cement, so they're just demolishing everything in that yard and then rebuilding everything up again.
Mm.
So you just can't get it into the front. So
Right. Right.
yeah, I was going to ask you with your techniques, what kind of paper do you use when you draw?
Actually, the even though it's not, I don't use the watercolor paper, which is funny. I actually use a smooth Bristol board that's
Yeah.
about close to 100 pounds. And the reason I like the smooth is it's actually a technique I learned from Bert Silver. There's an artist by the name of Bert Silverman who actually says that the good thing about smooth paper, we use watercolor. Okay, most papers they have fibers. So the way the
Yep.
watercolor paper works is when you add the watercolor, it goes sinks in. With the smooth paper, the watercolor stays on top. So if there's any mistakes or problems, you can either take water and just wipe it off. So one of the things I'm able to do with the watercolor on the paper is sometimes I can just take, if I don't like the way something looks, I just go in and I just wash it right off, and it works really nicely. So I use the Bristol board paper for the watercolor just to give it a technique, and also because it actually, and I like putting pencil on it or pen. So again, that paper is perfect for also the mixed media that I use with. So I use that mainly for when I do the color pieces, the watercolor ones. If I do black and white, I'll use almost anything. Actually, recently I did a comic where actually I use graph paper. And the reason I use graph paper is this is a technique that's been used by many alternative cartoonists. It's a way to draw in your panels without having to use a ruler or need a ruler, because the graph paper has everything laid out.
Right.
And then you just, you draw the panels to the size you want them. Then you just go in with the ink. Then when you have to print it, you can just say, with a blue line does not show up in most photocopiers. So then all that's left is the inks.
Right.
And so I was playing around with that recently, and I've been kind of enjoying. If you just give me a couple of minutes, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Just
Sure.
a second. Sorry about that. Couldn't find it properly, but
Yeah, no problem.
and no, I couldn't find it. So It must be in my studio right now. But anyways, so I started playing with that, and then I started grabbing this sketchbook, which is this is 80 pounds, acid free. Again, I prefer using the medium to smooth surfaces. I don't like very rough surfaces because it does get the ink really nicely. But I find with the smooth surfaces, I can get much more of a I love using a brush. So what I like to do is it gives me, it's almost like the lines flows very easily. Just trying to see if I can find a drawing here. So maybe this best example I can think of. There's a topless woman, so it's up to you. But this gives you an idea. So the line work with the brush is very smooth, and I like that feel to it. And then I can go in with some renderings. So this is just something I'm trying, but I prefer using that type of paper when I'm going with the brush, just because I just find it just gives it just the line, like I said, just flows very quick, very easily. The more rough it takes a little bit more of an edge, and I've heard that lately that some of the papers these days, the more rough, they're not as, I don't know what it is. It's the quality is just not there as it used to be. So, but I like trying different things. Like I've also been doing. I also did another one. I'm trying to do another comic where I'm gonna use the brush work, and then I want to render it. I don't know if I don't think I have it here. And I'm going to do the rendering in pencil instead of actually doing hatching. I'm just going to do it in pencil instead.
Right.
And just I've been playing with that a bit, and I want to do a story with that and trying different mediums. It's one of the things I enjoy doing as well, just playing with the medium, trying to get different techniques, different, and then I look at different styles and see what work really well. Like for instance, the cover, the pieces I did for you for Max Berger. And I was going to do a painting, and I was interested because it's like I'm looking at Frank Miller's Sin City, which is, of course, very simple uses of white and black and negative positive space. And I said to myself, I have to paint this. So how do I balance those two out? So it was really a real challenge to try and figure out how to balance the two out. So that's one of the other things I really enjoy is actually trying to challenge myself, how to push myself to go beyond what I can do. There's a quote by a modern artist by the name of Robert Rauschenberg that I always use. And what he says is, why would I want to do something I know how to do? And I was like, what does that mean? And I kind of got it later that what he was talking about is, why do creative paint? If I know how to draw something or paint something, why draw it and paint it that way? I know how to do it already. Why not I do something that I don't know how to do and try a different technique with it, try something different with it? So I kind of do that with myself sometimes. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it's just a mess. So,
well, when I went to that school, Open Door, the teacher I had, his name was Ronald McDonald. He says, I'm not related to the one with the burger place, he said. But he was teaching us different techniques to use. Like when we would draw, we'd have life classes. We have somebody from the class to model for us. And for rendering, he would get us to use popsicle sticks, and we'd sharpen them, and we dip them into ink, and then we draw with that. And whatever we could find, we would use to draw with. It could be a stick, it could be, whatever, and just use that to try to draw with. And I found that very interesting because that pushed then thinking using pencil and a brush. Now you had a popsicle stick that you can use to draw with. And so when I was finished with the class, he introduced us to an adult kind of drawing class, because in the school you couldn't have nude models. It's a school. It's a public school. So he couldn't, and he had to have us, he took us out to his studio, because he shared it with a whole bunch of people, the studio, and they had a spot there for models and stuff. and he had to bring in a model that had clothes on. But then he would have ones at night that you could sign up for, and then it would be nude models. But because it was a school board, he couldn't do that kind of stuff. And we're all adults, you know. And but I took his classes. No, he didn't teach anything for the life model studies. So we just come in. You're doing people with clay and stuff like that. So I bring in my popsicle sticks and my indie ink and stuff like that, and I try different techniques and stuff like that, you know. But yeah, I learned a lot from doing kind of stuff. Now, when you do your artwork, when you start doing a page or something, do you do layouts?
I actually start doing thumbnails for a couple of reasons. But my thumbnails tend to be super rough, and the reason is because I found the more detail I used to do my thumbnails, when I had to do the finished pieces, it came out like garbage, because it's almost like I figured everything out already. So there's nothing else to figure out. So whenever I do a story, the first thing I do is I do thumbnails, and it just gives me an idea where the characters are, how the story's going to flow, But I also, what I'm thinking about is how the page is laid out, because to me, one of the most important aspects about storytelling in comics is how does the page look? How is the page being used to tell the story? And one fascination I developed was Will Eisner's technique called the metal panel, which is to actually eliminate all the borders. So how do you tell a story when you don't have the panel borders in place? Because the panel borders act as a self-contained moment, and the space in between is what happens from one moment to the next moment. So you almost read those panels as the moment that's taking place until the next moment. So how then would you do it if you remove the panel? How do you then tell the story? So I was fascinated with Will Eisner, where what he talked about is using the space itself between each action and not using the panel borders as a way to separate time with space. So when I was playing with that, I realized that one of the most important parts of telling a story is not just what's happening in the panel, but how does the page itself look with all the drawings in it, and how does the story flow within this page, and how is the story being told in that page. So the way a page is laid out is to me in some ways more important than just the panel or that one moment in the action itself, because you're basically telling the story how it's flowing along, going along, and how can I put this? Here's the best way I can describe this. There's a contemporary Chinese artist who once made a statement that the Chinese have a saying. And the saying is, one reads an image, one reads a drawing. And it got me to thinking, do we look at comics or do we read comics? In other words, when we're seeing, let's say, a picture, a drawing of Superman flying through the air, are we looking at it or do we read it? Are we reading this moment taking place? So if that's the case, then how am I reading the page from one image to the next? And so that's something that I'm always thinking of. So while there are some cartoonists who break the page up panel by panel, I choose to go a different direction because I want to see how the page itself is telling the story. And that's the approach I take as well. So, and then of course, because they use a color, I can use the color to act as almost as a panel border for each action taking place. So as you're seeing, if one action is in the background is yellow, the next action the background is blue, that kind of acts as a border itself. So especially, yeah.
It's an interesting way of doing that.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the ways I do it. I mean, everybody has a different way. You know, Nate Powell, even when I look at Nate Powell, when he also, there's more times when he doesn't even have a panel, like the page I showed you, okay? He doesn't even put banner borders. What he just does is leave space in between. And what's interesting, like let's look at this, like this page right here. Oops, sorry. What's interesting is look at the amount of space he's left right about here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? Why? I mean, there's a lot of space leaving there. But all you need is to look at this. So it makes me think about how the page is utilized in order to actually get that across. So that fascinates me, how he does it. This is one of the things I love when he does. I love how he leaves the page open, and then he uses the movement of the words, the text, to actually act as a panel board. And this is what I'm talking about. Like that is phenomenal, in my opinion. And that's phenomenal. So the guy's being swung around by his feet, and he's using the text as a way to mimic the movements. So, but it's also how to use a page. So again, it's one of the things I'm fascinated by. So that's what I kind of do as well. I try to look at that as well.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that in Dave Sims stuff and his service stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
Dave used a lot of that. I think when I was doing issue 2, I think Dave influenced me a lot on that one.
Oh, really?
Because Dave did a lot of dream stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I have a couple of issues when he's doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
what's interesting is when I met Gerhard at Fan Expo, and I was asking Gerhard what it was like to do the backgrounds for Dave Sim when he would just do the characters. And Gerhard said he actually had a drawing there where he showed how he figured out the perspective of the backgrounds for all the characters. And that was always a challenge, he said, to figure that out. So I thought it was kind of interesting myself, especially the way that Dave Sim laid out a page. So Sims must have laid out a page a certain way in order for Gerhard to actually follow.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, Gerhard was telling me, I think it was last year at Richard Cumley's convention, and he was saying that Dave would just draw a line and say, "This is a table," and then Gerhard would have to render that table to make it look like a table.
Yeah.
Because it was just a line, probably just service drawn in there, and then he just had a straight line and a line going underneath, and then Gerhard would have to go, okay, it's square. Yeah. So it sounded like Dave didn't do that much work, really. It was all Gerhard stuff,
Well, it's funny because I remember talking to some cartoonists, and we have actually, I remember Joe, he taught us this. He said, when you're going to comics, you got to learn how to draw everything. He said, the problem is most people, they only draw the characters, the superheroes. But you got to draw the superhero with a background. So how's the building going to look? How's the car going to look? If you don't know how to draw that, it's worthless.
Yeah.
So you were taught to basically draw everything. You had to draw everything. You had to learn how to draw water. You had to learn how to draw rain. How you draw trees, how you draw a house, how you draw a building, how to get and also always get the right reference. Never, because I remember there was one assignment where I couldn't get the proper type of reference. I think it was for a hospital scene, and I told Joe I just couldn't find the reference, and Joe said, "That's no excuse. You figure it out. You have to get that reference." And it's like, well, what do I have to do? Go into a hospital? He says, if you have to, go into the hospital. Ask him if you can draw one of the beds or how the room looks like. But you get that reference. There's no excuse. And that's exactly how it was. It was that. And he said, if in the comic you say, well, I had trouble drawing with the car, he said, well, then that's not an excuse. Learn how to draw the car. And he was that adamant when it came to that sort of stuff. So I had to always learn and work hard to make sure to get the right type of reference all the time and make sure I draw it properly. and it's just part of the training that he gave us. So there was no shortcuts. That was something that was just not allowed in this class or ever.
Yeah, this is before internet too, right?
Yeah.
For references, they did have to go through books and stuff like that. Now it's so that simple. You could just go Google or Instagram. Because I was talking to somebody the other day. I think it was Dan Fraga, and he was mentioning that he goes on Instagram, and if he needs a reference for a drawing or something. But I usually go Google, and I'll find what I need that I need for a reference. Like right now I'm drawing sewers, so I need, I could look at the Ninja Turtle books if I want to get reference for, but then I don't want to copy off them. I just want some of my own. So if I find a photo that kind of I can work with, and then that'll give me a reference. But do you do any of that Google and stuff?
I use Google a lot. I use Instagram. At one point, I used to have actually a library of all these books and magazines of almost everything. So even photographs. The best one was actually photo reference books, because they would have photographers who had taken photographs of almost everything. And I would just have those on hand and flip through the books there for whenever I needed a reference for something. But these days, I'm able to go onto Google or Instagram just to get the reference that I need, and just I can work it from there. So it was funny because one of the other great things about going to Cuba school, I'll never forget this. My friends and I would go to New York City when we had to do a comic based on a celebrity, let's say, okay, or a show.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine told me about the store in New York City where you could actually get photographs from scenes from any show, any movie. You just name the movie or the show, they'll have the photograph reference for it, scenes from it. You'd have to sign a waiver, basically saying that you were not going to sue the store or anything for the photographs you were given, because you had to purchase these photographs. I was able to get a bunch of photographs of the actors and scenes from Miami Vice. And the photographs were crystal clear. Like you could see everything. Everything was just like perfect. I was like, how the hell did you guys get this? And they would say, okay, do you want to purchase them or not? Well, yeah, I need them. She says, okay, sign the waiver, $40, they're yours. And you could go through all the files. And I mean, anything. You just name it, they had the photographs. I had friends of mine who would actually go, there's one friend of mine who was really into Alfred Hitchcock, and he bought a bunch of photographs of them because he loved Hitchcock movies so much. It wasn't even the reference. He just loved the Hitchcock movies. So he just went in, bought all these photographs from Hitchcock. So it all scenes from Hitchcock movies. Wow. I still remember that. That was fun. That was fun, going to that store, that place.
Yeah. It's not there anymore, is it?
I don't think so. I don't know. Obviously, I haven't been here for a long time, but I'm not even sure if it's there anymore, because, like I said, some of these photographs, I guess, because I think, from what I understand, sometimes when you shoot shows or movies, you do take photographs as references and for when you do the movie. So these were like what photographers were selling these on the side just to make extra money. And that's how they would do it. And the store, I guess, kept buying photographs. And they just said, yeah, we'll buy them and then we'll sell them, resell them. So, yeah.
Nice. Well, listen, Claudio, it's nice chatting with you. I'm going to end the broadcast.
It's no problem.
So if you want to let people know where they can find you again.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Ghirardo. You can find me on Instagram also at Ghirardo. I do have a full Facebook page, which again, Ghirardo. You have to look how to spell C and then Ghirardo. I also have a webcomic I'm running back up. It's paintedcomics.wordpress.com. I also have a website, Claudio Ghirardo, and the comics, the newest comics will be posted on my Painted Comic WordPress and then they'll also be on foreignpresscomics.com. Will be then some comics will be posted there as well. So, and then I have a coffee account, ko-fi, but you can find out about that when you go to Foreign Press and my Painted Comic WordPress account. You can see more stuff there. So, and yeah, so if you like what I do, all I ask is that every once in a while, just put a donation into coffee when I get coffee going. It just helps me out, and I can keep on buying the supplies I need to keep because to buy because I do any comics, the supplies cost. Watercolors, pencils, markers, all that stuff costs money. So I appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you, Claudio. I'm going to end the broadcast. Can you just hang on for a second? I'll talk to you at the end of the broadcast.
Sure.
All right. Okay. So thank you, people. We'll back to probably tomorrow. I don't have a guest yet, but I'll be back on it too. So everybody have a great day. Bye-bye.
Take care.